You are peculiar. You are very, very strange. Possibly even crazy. Rod Sterling said, to be the same as everyone is to be noble. Hello, everybody, and welcome to The Narrow Gate. I'm here to convince you that it is good to be weird. So when we say these words like weird or peculiar or strange or bizarre or crazy, what do we mean? Well, I guess what we mean is that thing, that person, is not normal, not the same. Now the thing is, of course that thing, that person, is not the same. Of course you're not the same. And this is kind of the incredible thing about friendships and having friends and having relationships, is that you're not the same. You may be able to connect with people that see things differently, and you might help each other to see things differently than you normally would have. For example, everyone has got to be wrong about something, but the thing is we aren't necessarily wrong about the same things. And I guess what I'm saying here is it's really incredible being able to correct those of us who think differently than us and be corrected by those who think differently. Now, numerous times in the Bible, it talks about Christians being set apart, Christians doing things differently than non-Christians, Christians being peculiar. The thought of that as Christians we shouldn't be concerned about the judgment of man, but instead we should be concerned about the judgment of God. There will often be times when you're gonna think, I should do the normal thing, I should try to fit in, I should stop wearing goggles and knee pads around everywhere.
No one's meant to do that.
But in reality, I believe that God has created you with certain gifts for a reason, because he's going to use those gifts through you. I think that you, in particular, have something to offer that no one else necessarily does. Now, parts of what you have to offer, other people will have to offer, but you're unique in such a way where your passions and your characteristics, your quirks, your peculiarities, that's a fun word. Did I make that word up? I don't know. But God has given you that for a particular reason. And it's like the story of the man who buried all his money and he was called foolish. That verse is right there. Ooh, that's a good story. To try and fit in, a lot of times you might be tempted to bury those peculiarities. Those things, the very things that make you you, and the things that God put inside of you so that he could use you. And this is why I think it's so important to be strange and to allow yourself to do so. I'm not saying that you should actively try and be like, woo, I'm the craziest guy around, woo-hoo-hoo, right? Like, you shouldn't be just looking for attention, but you should be willing to use the gifts that God has given you and the passions God has given you, regardless of whether those passions are seen as taboo or strange or peculiar. And I think it's like, oh, maybe you're maybe you're someone who likes attention, right? Or likes creating things to share with people, right? And it's like, oh, you could just become this guy who's like always doing these things to draw attention to himself, or you could use that characteristic to make things that ultimately point to God, to turn yourself into, this is something I was thinking about a while back, but to turn yourself into a road sign. Like, if you were a road sign, what do you point to? Do you point to just yourself, or do you point to God? And I think a lot of people might kind of have that charisma and love of performing and creating stuff. And it's like, well, don't point that, don't use that to just point to yourself, but instead use it to point to God, or use it to glorify God. And that's like, everything that is weird about you, right? I believe that it's there for a reason. And like, maybe you're not quite sure how you're gonna use those gifts, those peculiarnesses of you. But maybe if you if you pray about it and ruminate on it, that's another good word, ruminate. But if you ruminate on it, maybe you can find a way that God will use those things in you. And it's like, whoa, that's pretty cool, right? And I think also the other side of that, you probably should not try and box people in to the same kind of person that you are, but instead you should encourage them to to be weird, to be different from what you are. Not that they can't take inspiration from you or anything like that, because of course they can. Like, this very video I'm making is from me taking inspiration from a lot of people. So, like, certainly you can take inspiration from people, but it's like, you gotta be drawn to that, I think. But with all that being said, don't forget to brush your teeth. Woohoo! What a great video. I hope you enjoyed it. I'm just jumping in here real quick to clarify one thing I said at the end, or kind of discuss something that I left out. But I was talking about taking inspiration from people, and I said something, but I didn't take the time to explain it, so that's what I'm doing now. Basically, I said that you gotta be, when taking inspiration from people, you've gotta be drawn to it for whatever reason. And I guess kind of what I meant by that is like, you shouldn't just pretend to be one way or the other, or like, you shouldn't just try and be that person which you're taking inspiration from. You have to take inspiration from that person in ways that you connect with yourself. So it's like, if you just try and be everything like someone, then for one thing, you're probably putting that person up on a pedestal and making them better than they actually are, that you try and completely mimic them 100%. And that's kind of why I'm saying don't do that. And then for another thing, you have your own way to shine. So you can take things from people as long as you have a way to make it your own. But with that being said, yes, you guessed it. This video was just made for me to justify the goggles and knee pads.
I hate it when he does that.
Bye.